Hello, my name is John. I'm a creative arts pastor. I want to welcome you to our special online service here at Rivers United Church. If you've been with us for a while, we want to say welcome back. If you're new with us, we want to say welcome. We believe you could not have picked a better Sunday to be here. If you're visiting with us, we want to tell you just a couple things about our church before we get to this week's message. First, if you'd like to learn more about us, you can check out our website at riversunited.church. Also, if you're looking for a past message series, you can check out our YouTube channel. And also, we are on Facebook. We live stream our services at 11:15 every Sunday morning, as well as we provide some updates and some pictures about what's been going on in our church on Facebook. So you can check out all of those resources to learn more about us. Also, we want you to know if you would like to receive a weekly email, promise we won't spam your email box. It's just one email a week detailing about what message series we're in and also some updates about some upcoming events. You can go to our website, click the box that says Digital Weekly, sign up for our Digital Weekly, and you will receive a weekly email. Also, we want you to know that our purpose here was not to invite you here to give us money. If you've been with us for a while and you would like to partner with us, you can go to our website, riversunited.church, click the button that says Give, and there you will find all the ways that you can partner with us. Also, we want you to know if you have a question, comment, maybe you have prayer requests, you got something going on, and you would like for us to contact you, you can go ahead and send us an email at connect@riversunited.church, and we will get back with you as soon as possible. Guys, we're glad you're here this morning. Here is this week's message.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rivers United Church. My name's Dave. I serve as the associate pastor here. We are so glad that you're here. If you are here for the first time or maybe even the second time, we just want to extend a very warm welcome to you. We're so glad that you're here today. One of the easiest ways you can learn about Rivers United Church is to go to our website, which is riversunited.church. There you'll learn quite a bit about who we are, what we're about. It's a great way to kind of stay connected with us. Another way you can stay connected is we have something called a connection card. That connection card is in the pocket behind the seat. You'll see a couple things in that pocket there. The connection card is something you can put a prayer request. Maybe you have a question, a comment. We'd love to connect with you. If you do complete that card, just drop it in one of these connection boxes. They're at the doors, and someone would be happy to get back with you. Also, there's a giving envelope there. If you are a regular attender of Rivers United Church and you came predetermined to give, that's a great way you can give. You can also give online. You can text to give. If you do use that envelope, you can just drop it in that too. It's locked. It's safe. You can put your donation in there. And also, if you are a guest, we didn't invite you here to ask you for money. We really want this service to be more for you than we want from you. Also, one of the ways you can also stay connected is to sign up for our Digital Weekly. Our Digital Weekly is something you can get in your inbox, in your email every week. It'll let you know what's going on here at the church, upcoming events, sermon series. You can sometimes register for events. You can go to our website and just fill the information out, and then you can begin getting this information in your inbox every week. One other quick thing, if you are a youth, we have a youth program here called Rapid Impact Youth, and right now we're not meeting today, but beginning September 17th, at this very moment, we're going to begin meeting again. So if you are a young person, and you want to join and be a part of a great youth ministry here, Rapid Impact Youth, they're going to start meeting September 17th. Lastly, if you need prayer today, one of our prayer partners would be happy to pray with you right over in that corner area. Again, welcome to Rivers United. We are just so glad that you're here.
All right, good morning, and thank you, Dave. So, my question for you today as we get started is this. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? What do you want to be remembered for? And so what I did was I went out and I got some tombstones of some people, and this is what they were remembered for. Either they wanted to put this on their tombstone or some people put it on their tombstone. So here's a couple of them. The first one is this. This was a carpenter, and they said he nailed it. Okay, there you go. This was a banker. He cashed out. Jogger. I run a lot, so I don't know if I think that's funny, but he ran out of breath. I felt like this the other day, but anyway. Gardener, pushing up daisies. There you go. Musician, John Baston, decomposing. Sorry. Coffee person, like I say, like Starbucks, ground to perfection. And then probably my favorite one was this one because I hear this the most because I visit a lot of people in the hospital. See, I told you I was sick. Okay, anyway, sorry. I want to make it too much. I was kind of sad to hear yesterday, I think Jimmy Buffett passed away, and I really did like him. But I think if he had to have it on his grave, can you guess what he would put, I'm just a cheeseburger in paradise. Okay, we're done with that. So let me get that off the screen. I don't want to make fun of it too much. If you're going through a hard time, I think what we're going to talk about is going to make sense. But my question for you is this. What do you want to be known for? What is the legacy that you want to leave? Today we're wrapping up a series that we've been in about the life of Moses. We called it Old School with Moses. The kids are about to go to school, and we've been going old school with Moses, learning some life lessons from the life of Moses. And the final piece is his last will and testament, if you will, which is honestly in the Bible. You might not realize it. It's a book of the Bible. It's called the Book of Deuteronomy. And I'll challenge you with this, that Moses left behind an incredible last will and testament. Make sure you do that. If you don't have a will, please get one. I mean, I go to many, many funerals, and you can't believe the amount of people. We try to help families as much as we can, but when you don't do that, it's very irresponsible. Some people don't think of that. And I mean, I know death is hard to think about and all that kind of stuff, but don't leave a mess for your family. Moses did not. He left something. But even more importantly than the money and the financial stuff, he left a legacy of the things that he charged the children of Israel with before he left. And today we're going to take a look at it, his last words. In fact, in the book of Deuteronomy, that's his entire charge, but it's summarized really in one chapter of it, in chapter 6. Now, I just want to say before I get into it, I read this at every baby dedication. So for some of you guys, this will be familiar. However, we're not going to look at it through the same lens that we do during a baby dedication. This is about you. This is about legacy. This is about leadership and how to leave a lasting legacy. Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 1, the final words of Moses say this. These are the commands and the decrees and the laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess. I want you to take a look at a certain word that he uses. He says, you and your. Look how many times he says that, right? Your God, that he directed me to teach you in the land that you will possess. You know what's missing from there? Me, we. He didn't even say that. He's pointing beyond himself. It's not that it's not his God or that it's not what he cares about. This is not him being like, hey, I'm bitter because of what happened last week when we talked about that Moses made a mistake and that's why he's not going into the promised land. Moses is actually going beyond himself and he's saying, one, I'm not going to be there, so it's going to be your God. It's going to be your land. And he's pointing to something bigger than himself. Let me ask you this. What is your life pointing to? Is it pointing to just you or to God? And so the first thing I'd like you to write down if you're taking notes today, and I'd highly recommend that you do, and the way I would say to use the notes is this, is take them and from time to time in your life, maybe pull them out and kind of rate yourself like, hey, how am I doing with this? Because it's funny, you can know this stuff, but sometimes we can get off track, and maybe that's where you're at. Okay, the first thing you got to do is this. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. That's what Moses knows. He wasn't talking about himself. A great friend of mine and kind of a mentor, he told me this one time. He said, John, you're just not that important. That was kind of hard to hear, isn't it? I remember John Maxwell putting it this way. He said, if you think you're that important, just die. And he said, you know what's going to happen? And I do know this from doing a lot of funerals, that 30 minutes after they put you in the ground, people will be eating potato salad somewhere going, it's a shame about old what's his name? What's his name again? What did he do? Right? Who's that again? Pass me the baked beans, that kind of thing, right? I don't want to let the air out of the balloon too much. Some of you guys, that's hard to hear, isn't it? Because we take ourselves so seriously. Some of us, I understand we're going through grief, so I wasn't trying to make fun earlier other than to say, be careful that you don't put a lot of stock into how will they remember me, and that's what you're putting all your influence in, right? I want them to remember me. By the way, they won't. I don't mean to let the air out of the balloon. They won't, for the most part. Most people, they won't. Let me tell you something. I grew up right down the street at Antioch Christian Church where my dad pastored. And in the parking lot of Antioch Christian Church was a grave Nobody knew who it was in the 1800s. I asked everybody in the church, who is that? You know what ends up happening? They end up just parking on top of you, right? And nobody knows who that is. Does that make you feel good? 3 generations, they won't even know your name, right? How many people know where your grandparents are buried? How many people know where your great-grandparents are buried, right? How many people even know your names of your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents? Tough, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard. What I'm trying to tell you is this, is you got to get your motives right if you want to leave something that's lasting. Something that goes beyond you. It doesn't point to you. That sounds so weird, doesn't it? But that's exactly what the greatest leader that the world ever didn't point to himself. The question is this, and this is what you got to have to ask yourself. Are you building my kingdom or thy kingdom? Big difference. You know who can't get it right? It's those that are toxic. It's hard to admit that you're a toxic person, but let me ask you a question. When you go, will you leave a bitter epilogue? You know, Moses could have. And it's easy to do as you get older. Anybody that's older can tell you that as you get old, I wouldn't know because I'm in my prime, but as you get older, life hurts, doesn't it? It hurts. And if you're not careful, what happens is when you hurt and when you suffer, you become very self-centered. I'm not trying to say I don't understand why. So it takes a lot of effort not to leave a bitter epilogue. Moses could have done that. Well, God didn't let me go in, so fine, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to hold my breath. That's not what he did, though. He had every reason to think that, right? After all the years I put in, after everything I've done. Anybody feel that way? They treat me like this. They don't remember me. They won't even remember what I did. What I did is not important because they won't talk about me, right? He could have done that, but he didn't. Don't leave a bitter epilogue. Be careful. This is going to take some real intentionality. Toxic people will never leave a lasting legacy. And here's what I know. A lot of people will blow it right at the end. Now, I understand. Sometimes somebody has some mental capacity issues, and we all understand that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is you could choose differently, but the way you choose to look at life, it becomes very bitter and angry and self-focused, and you blow the greatest thing that you could have left, which is your legacy. Not just your legacy, God's legacy. See, Moses got it right. He starts to point towards God. This is important. Because here's what I know. An insecure person can't do it. An insecure person is driven by fear. And there's kind of 2 sides to that fear. One is this, is the insecure person that's a codependent. I need them to need me, so you'll never leave anything lasting because you'll never say anything worthwhile because you're scared you want them to like you, right? I need them to need me. I don't want them. I could never use words like you. It has to be we. And I would never like to think that you're going to go past where I'm at, that you're going to be in the promised land and I won't, right? You got to think past yourself. Unless you could say #me, right? You know why you got to the promised land? Because of me. Make sure you don't forget me. Make sure you make a shrine to me. There's a lot of leaders in the world that do that, isn't there? Statues of yourself. Is that what we build? Is that who we are? You see, the envious person will never be a great leader because they can't celebrate anyone else. They couldn't celebrate the success of someone else, and they certainly couldn't celebrate their going in. And by the way, it won't be you, Moses. It will be Joshua, your successor. They can't stand it. I can't tell them all my tricks. Is that how you do? At work, I don't want them to know everything I know because then they won't need me, right? I want to make sure it kind of goes down a little bit when I'm not there. I don't want it to get bigger without me, right? Unless, of course, they want to say it was from the school of Moses. It was, all my royalties come to me, and yeah, get it, right? You got to get over yourself if you want to leave something amazing. And by the way, Moses left one of the most incredible legacies there's ever been. He goes on to say this, verse 2. So that you and your children and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, keeping all his decrees and commandments that I give you, and so that it may go well with you and you may enjoy long life. See, Moses got it. God's vision goes beyond his life. He saw vision. You see, he wasn't just looking back. That's what a lot of people are doing, right? The older you get, you look back a lot. He was looking forward. He was looking at the vision, and he was looking at a vision of God's that goes beyond him, and he got it. You know what he was doing with them, though? Number 2, Number one, he got over himself so that he could, number two, affirm them. You want to know the greatest thing you'll ever do as a leader? Affirm someone. It's more important than you'll ever know. You bring people out. It's amazing. But not affirm them in himself, right? So that they'll go, oh, I couldn't have done it without Moses. We like to hear that, don't we? Oh, he's so great. Oh, man, how can we do it? We can't even go in without him. Or when we're there, we have to, all praise go to Moses. That's what we like, isn't it? Affirm them in God. You know, there was a great leader that I had studied and know about, and I know him more through his students, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But his name was Howard Hendricks. Maybe you know him, maybe you don't. In a minute, I'm going to tell you some of his people that he's mentored, and you will know. You may know some of those. You may or may not, but a lot of us in the room would know him. But Howard Hendricks, a number of years ago, was an amazing pastor. He was an amazing professor at Dallas Theological Seminary. And they brought him into Promise Keepers, which now I realize it's not just like, hey, that was 10 years ago. It's been decades and decades ago that they had Promise Keepers. And it was a group of men, and it was kind of a revival in our country where men would come and they'd fill stadiums, and they even went to RFK Stadium and different places. And at the first Promise Keepers, I wasn't there for that one, but I did get to hear his speech later. Howard Hendricks spoke, and they interviewed him. And they said, Howard, could you tell us what's the greatest thing that you've accomplished in your life? Because he's done many things. I mean, he wrote best-selling books. He was a very well-known author. He had spoke at many places. And he said, to affirm the maleness in my students. I thought, wow, you could have worded that a little better. Really? That's it? I understand what he means now, though. He said, what I'm doing is I'm calling out the godly man and woman in them. Most important thing you'll ever do. That's what he said at Promise Keepers. And I believe that he meant that. I think he stuck to that. It was an iconic moment for him. And it almost doesn't make sense until you realize, you know what the legacy that Howard Hendricks left? I'll give you a couple of his students from Dallas Theological Seminary that he invested in personally. One of them is Dr. Tony Evans. Maybe you've heard of him. He has a daughter named Priscilla Shriver that now is going on. So it's going on for more than one generation. Dr. Edward Lutzer. Dr. Robert Jeffers, Dr. David Jeremiah, and one of my favorite that really has impacted me the most is Dr. Chuck Swindoll. All of those were students and people that he pulled out what he would call the maleness. He called out the godly man in these men's lives. That's an incredible legacy, isn't it? You want to know why he could do that? Because he affirmed them. Let me ask you a question. Who are you affirming? You know who can affirm? An insecure person. Can't. You can't affirm somebody else because you're scared that they might go a little bit further than you. By the way, most of the names that I said from Howard Hendricks, a lot of people don't even know what his name is. Not about your brand. Be careful. Branding's important, I get it. I do it, we have it. Be careful you're not building your brand, but God's. God's brand will go on. And by the way, it is. It's amazing, the ministries and all the stuff that's happening. Verse 3. You guys need to listen a little bit faster, okay? Hear, O Israel, and be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, promised you. What he's doing here and what he's about to do, I just want to make sure you get it. Number 3, charge them. Charge them to remember God. Everything about what comes next is this. He's saying, remember God. Nothing more important you could ever do is charge them with that. Here's how the charge goes. Verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's one of the most amazing verses in the Bible. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. He starts with what? Love. Don't forget it, right? It's so easy to start getting into what you need to do and what you do. And he goes, make sure you understand that love has to be at the apex. In the New Testament, it says it in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It says that if you don't have love, you have nothing. So he starts with love. And then he says this, verse 6. These commands that I give you today are to be on your hearts. That's worded really well. The commands in your heart. The two don't seem to go hand in hand, right? The way I feel and then the list of rules. You know what he's saying here, though? It's not just a list of rules. It's the guiding principles. What he's saying is this: don't let your heart lead you. You lead your heart. We're going to talk more about that next week. We got a series we're going to talk about the unbeatable mind and how that our mind really needs to lead our heart, not the other way around. It sounds wrong, and I get it because sometimes we misunderstand what we mean by heart. I don't mean the control center of your life. What I mean is your emotions, your passions. Are they not important? They are. Are they not indicators? They are. But if you let them lead you, it will lead you to a bad place. Ask Moses. I think he's highlighting something that happened for him that we talked about last week. The reason why Moses is not going into the promised land was because he let anger intoxicate him, and he was led by his emotions in a moment, and his behavior caught up with his heart, and that was a bad day, see? And he's challenging them, lead your heart. You want to know what you challenge them with? Challenge yourself first, though, right? Lead your heart. Are you just led by your emotions? Don't do that, right? Verse 7. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. I would say it this way: more is caught than taught. And we know that to be true. Maybe you don't know that to be true. Let me tell you this. My son is a pastor's son. Not once has he probably learned anything from me lecturing, right? I doubt he remembers many of my messages. I don't sit down at home and say, son, let me preach to you today, or let me sit down and right? Doesn't work, does it? More is indirect than is direct. It's true. Think about it for your life. Can I tell you, I'm a pastor's son. My dad's passed away. It's been 27 years ago. And can I tell you something? I don't hardly remember any of his messages. I remember what he did. I remember the indirect. And a lot of things that you don't necessarily mean to pass on, you pass on, right? And a lot of things you do mean to pass on, but you have mannerisms, right? Have you looked at people? We had a funeral yesterday, and I was looking at people I hadn't seen in like decades, and it was so funny to look at their kids, and you go, man, they act just like it's indirect, isn't it? The things that we do, it's amazing how that you pass those things on, or you say things like this: I'll never say that to my kids, and then you sound just like your parents, right? Have you ever had that happen? I am them, right? And you're like, why, right? That's how it goes. Because it's so indirect. He's saying pay attention to those indirect moments. They do more for you than you can imagine. My warning to you as parents is this, and grandparents. We're busy people, right? I think that's a good thing. A lot of people say don't be busy, and you're like, you know what? If you want to look somebody to do something, find somebody that's busy, because at least they're accomplishing something, right? Versus somebody that's not busy and has all this time. You're like, why do they have all this time? They don't know what to do with their life. Sorry. However, this is one where you got to carve it out. That's what it means. Be careful what you're teaching your kids. You know what we teach them? To be busy like us, to pack their schedules with more and more and more, because we think more and more and more will accomplish. Can I tell you, as a pastor that's done a whole bunch of funerals, not once have I mentioned how much somebody made. Not once have I pulled out a financial statement. Not once. And we know that at the end. We seem to think we know that, but then we actually look at what we invest in and what we invest our kids in. And is it lining up? Is it making them experience rich but relationship poor, when we know in the end that relationships are the most important part? Their relationship with God, their relationship with other people, that's what will be the real thing that makes a difference. But yet we spend more time driving them from thing and activity. And I'm not saying activity is bad, but when it comes at the expense of building relationship, especially building it with you, what are you doing? Are you teaching them that hey, I got to be on the ball team and I got to do all this stuff? And so when they're under stress, they've learned a lesson, because, by the way, we watched them and they cannot possibly associate with each other. They don't know how to connect anymore, but they know how to go to the ball field. They know how to go to the college. They know how to go to the, right? What are you teaching them? By the way, some of us have to learn it first, don't we? I understand. I'm not saying any of those things are bad. Please don't think because I said ball that I'm not for it. I think there's great principles you can learn on the ball field. I think there are times that as a parent, you should be on the ball field and not here. I know that sounds horrible. I just think this should be the most important. In the end, they're not going to be a pro ball player, most of them, right? But they will need a relationship with God. And when the church always takes the back burner, can I tell you something? You've taught them who God is, and it isn't here. Be careful. Impress them. Teach them. Talk. Demonstrate it. And please don't ever think that you're going to pass something on to them that you don't have. That's not how this works. Well, I know I do this, but you better not. It's nonsense. Trust me. I have a 25-year-old. Believe me, it's nonsense. Okay. Verse 8. Tie them as symbols on your hands. So there's what it means here is there's nothing that Velcro and duct tape can't fix. Okay. Sorry. That's why I don't work in a kids' church. So anyway, let's leave it there. All right, we're done with that. You know what it means? What you do. Demonstrate it. What you do. That's what it means. When they say lift holy hands, it doesn't just mean that you have an experience. That's not what it means. Holy hands mean what you do. Don't just tell God, show him. That's important. By the way, they're going to see a lot more of what you do than what you say. They're going to do a lot more of what you do than what you say. Verse 8 continues to say this, and bind them on your foreheads. I have all kinds of jokes for that. But you know what it really means, though? Protect your thoughts. Teach them to protect their thoughts. We're going to talk about that next week. You can protect your mind. You can grow and build your mind. It's so important, but protecting it is important. But can I just add one caveat that I think would really help us? To teach them what you do when no one else is watching, that's true integrity. God sees, God knows. God doesn't care about all the things that people care about and fame and what you do out in public and what people, your perception and image and all that. He sees what you do in the privacy, and Moses is saying, make sure you pay attention to that. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Protect your home. Protect your gates. Make your home a refuge. Make your home a place that's safe for them to come. Doesn't mean you're perfect. Moses wasn't perfect. But make your home safe. That's what he's telling them. Make it a place where they can come. Protect their gates, especially their technological gates. I'll tell you something, as a father of a 25-year-old male, pay attention to what has their attention. It's okay to invade privacy to a point. You are the parent, right? I mean, come on. They're going to pick up things that it's not as easy to put down. You don't just get to look at those things and then think you'll put it down. You will have something that goes on and on and on because, man, it becomes addictions that you can't believe and ruins relationships. Is bigger than you think. Pay attention to what has their attention, right? Teach them. You know, somebody, well, I don't want to invade their privacy. They're your kid. Don't be too much. I get it. Too strict and you're going to turn them off and you're not being reasonable and you don't do it yourself. I mean, come on, man. We got to get real, but let's get real, right? Let's help them. You know, I got some people and there seems to be this thought that goes around that I want to kind of correct today. And I think I know where it comes from, but I think it's very problematic. And it goes kind of like this. I don't want to force them to believe. And I go, I don't either. I think that's bad. I mean, you can read through history, forcing people to believe by the sword, it really doesn't count. I mean, that's why we hate religion in the first place, is all these holy wars where we're forcing people to believe in a God they don't and all this. It's horrible. I've seen evangelicals do it where it's like, man, they're just so strict and so whatever, and we got to, you know, I get it. And maybe that's where that comes from. But they say this, I want them to make up their own mind so I don't share anything with them about God. This is where, I mean, I'm not lying when I tell you I've had more than one person tell me that. It's okay to use your influence, okay? Don't let society tell you different than that and that you're some kind of, you know, monger to do that. Let me tell you something. The same people that tell me that, I go, but you do make them go to school, right? You do tell them it's important to learn mathematics and different things like that. And so to not teach them about the greatest thing in your life, and you can do that through influence, not forcing. And by the way, the older they get, stop the forcing thing. It doesn't work, okay? It's relational. It's not about you forcing them. One day you were not going to be able to do it. But I got to tell you, the people that spent their time influencing me, can you imagine if they didn't though? Imagine if the people and the people, the spiritual giants that went before us that invested, like Howard Hendricks, that invested and called out the godly man and woman, said, yeah, I just want you to make up your own mind. You go read the books and figure it out yourself, and I hope you come up with the right answer, you know. And then later on, they're like, I did come up with the right answer. Why didn't you help me? All right? Use your influence. That's all that I'm saying. Verse 10. When the Lord your God brings you, I know that's a strange place to pause, but I just want to say, who brings you? The Lord your God. You know what Moses was known for? He's the greatest deliverer this world has ever known. There's not many cultures of the world that you can say the name Moses and they don't know what that is. Unchurched people that have never been to church, most everybody knows who he is. They might not know everything, but they know enough, right? The greatest exodus in the history of mankind. That's what he's known for. And he could say, when I brought you to the promised land, I didn't get to go in, but I brought you here. This is what I'm known for, right? But he uses all of his influence to point to God. What do you point to? The verse continues to say this. When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to give you. You know what he's doing there? He's drawing from their heritage. If you got a godly heritage, share that with them, right? It's okay to draw from that. We do that in this church. Just because we changed our name and we've merged and we've done all kinds of really cool stuff, we don't go, well, all those things that happened at Mount Carmel, we want to draw from that heritage as much as we can. Please do that. We don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. He doesn't want to go backwards to that. He's not living in the past. This isn't, oh, they're the good old days. They're not as good as you think. This is moving forward, but he's drawing from that heritage. But you know more than what he's doing, though? This is the same words that God told him. By the way, it's been over 40 years that God said this to him at the burning bush. And these people came 400 years before them. And he's drawing from that heritage, and he's saying, you know what God told me? That he proved himself and demonstrated himself to be God Almighty to our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's reminding them, and he's giving them the word and the promises of God. Because here's the thing, guys. You could forget, see? You could forget past victories if you're not careful, because it's never passed on. He swore to them in a land with large and flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of things that you did not provide, wells that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. And then you will eat and are satisfied. You see, they're about to go into the promised land, and when they get there, they've been wandering for 40 years. By the way, God miraculously took care of them there. They had clothes that didn't wear out. They had manna that God gave them from heaven. It's amazing how God helped them. But these were the children of the slaves. They were in Egypt. They were just too young, right? And then all the parents died off in the wilderness because they didn't believe God, and that's what it said. And then the children are coming in. But they only know slavery and wandering. And now you're going to be wealthier than you've ever been. And he's given a little bit of a warning. See, they're going to conquer the land. And by the way, I know how people feel about conquering, but just understand the people in the land had done some detestable things to God and to humanity, to be quite honest. And God was expelling them from the land, and the Israelites would live in those homes. And they was going, be careful when you get there and prosper, that you don't rewrite the story, you see. We're never more vulnerable. You can write this down if you want to. You'll never be more vulnerable than when you are prosperous. It's what everything you want, but yet it's the most dangerous time. Now, I want to be clear about something. There is nothing wrong with prospering. There is a whole, I don't know what it is, but some people think today we shouldn't win, and if you win, you're bad, okay? I don't know what that's about. It's really weird. I don't know if we just like to be losers or, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, I think I know a little bit where it comes from, but say this to yourself. It is okay to win. If you follow God, you will prosper. He's going to help you, not just financially prosper, but in every way. But what he's saying is, it's great to prosper, but when God brings you there, don't forget. Can I tell you how many people blow it here? How many churches blow it here? Where we kind of come back and we rewrite the book. You know what the book says then? How we did it. Our techniques. We forget about God. We forget that was, man, if it hadn't been for Moses, man, let me tell you my 12-step program to be Moses, right? And your family can sell it. And by the way, I won't be here, but my children will make royalties off these books that I wrote about how you can be the great leader. Then I can go on a speaking tour and tell you how I did it. Nothing wrong with sharing good information, but let me tell you something. Don't you ever forget in prosperity who got you there. Nothing wrong with having prosperity. There's something wrong when prosperity has you, right? What are you investing in? By the way, they did forget. Did you know? Did you know Moses actually said they would? He's been around them for 40 years. Believe me, he knows them better than anybody. He's like, I was with your parents, and now I know you guys. You're going to mess up. And you know what he's saying? When you mess up, let me show you the next part. When you mess up, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You know what he's teaching them? He's saying, guys, your kids will mess up. Your grandkids are going to mess up. Our great-great-grandkids in the future, they're going to mess up. And you need to point them to the way that says, here is how you come back to God, because you're going to need it. And they did need it, by the way. If you read the rest of the books, you'll realize, man, you think this was the end? This was the happily ever after? It only got worse, right? But then they would come back to God. They had a way back to God. Are you teaching your kids that? Do they even know your story? Or you just keep that to yourself, right? Do they know about your family? And you got to share it in the right time and in the right age appropriate. Can I just help some people, right? Your kid is not your buddy, okay? Don't share stuff that would terrify them and stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is do they know what God has done in your life? Because some of us have a story, right? God has delivered some of us he has delivered out of generational curses, right? I mean, generational, from generation to generation to generation, our family was, right? We were a family of alcoholics, and God broke that chain, right? We were a family of drug addicts. We were a family of thugs. We were a family of immoral and abuse, being abused or abusing, and God broke that chain. See, he got them out of Egypt. Well, let me ask you a question. What did God get you out of? What has God got your family out of? You know, God did that for our family. My dad was a pastor. I told you that. That's not his heritage. His heritage was this. Now, his dad died in World War II, so we don't know much about him. But his mom's dad, we didn't know him. But what he was known for was this. There's very few people that are from Portsmouth. Everybody's from the military that live in this area, right? I mean, all roads lead to the military, except for our family. We were from Portsmouth. What does that tell you, right? He's a worst person in Portsmouth. He got shot and killed at a bar. Left my grandma by herself during the Depression after her mother died and all that, and it was just a terrible thing. My dad broke that chain in our family. Most of our kids and our grandkids, they don't even know about it. They need to, though, right? What has he broke for you? What have you shared about that? So not only will they know, hey, this is where we came from, but when they mess up, not if they mess up, how to come back, right? Have you taught them that? What kind of legacy will you leave? I want to end the thought with what happens to Moses. After he gives this speech in the whole book of Deuteronomy, you can read at the end, chapter 34, and I read it this morning in my home quiet time. It says that God took him up on top of Mount Nebo, just him and God, not surrounded by people, nobody chanting his name. And it says there, God showed him the promised land. Not to say, see what you don't get to have. That's not what it was. God forgave Moses. Moses was 120 years old. You know how much God blessed Moses? It said that Moses was just as strong on the day that he died as the day that God called him at the burning bush. I would say that's a blessed life, wouldn't you? And then he allowed him to glimpse what the promised land was going to be like. And then he allowed him to see into the future and see what would happen. I think he allowed him to see a little bit further to go, you know, the lineage that you really sent was the lineage of the Lord Jesus Christ himself. You probably didn't know that, did you, Moses? You didn't realize the deliverer of all mankind was going to come from this lineage, and you got to deliver it here. And then it says that Moses died and that God himself buried him, just him and Moses, and that there was no tombstone on Moses' grave. No one knows where he's buried. You know, that's kind of controversial. People have looked for it. You know who actually looked for it? The devil. There's a place in the Bible where it talks about that the devil was arguing with Michael the archangel as to where Moses was buried. Don't know what that's about. It's just weird. That's sad though, right? Nobody to bring any flowers to your grave. We all go to the promised land and forget about you. That's how some of you are thinking, right? You wouldn't like that, would you? Nobody knows you. No reminder of who Moses was. Because Moses' life, and I think this is what he would say too, wasn't about pointing and enshrining Moses. This is big. It was about pointing to God. He used his life not to point to himself, but he used his life to point to God. And it changed the world. It changed that whole group of people, but the Lord Jesus Christ came from that. That's huge, isn't it? Let me ask you a question. Are you building a shrine to yourself? Are you pointing towards God? Will you affirm people? Oh, I know. We're going to do it one way or the other, right? You affirming them in you? They can't do it without me. I want to make sure they remember me. I'm going to leave my bitter epilogue, so that's how they can remember me. I want everything with my name on it. I want everything hashtag me. I want all my branding on it. I want to make sure they remember and years later that can I tell you, the church, we can do the same thing. I want to make sure this church lasts and we build a museum so they can remember how we did it, right? Is that who we are? You know that's what happens, right? We end up building museums to ourselves and then we perpetuate that into the future while we try to preserve something rather than advance it. We got to make a decision today. What kind of church do we want to be? A church that remembers us and remembers us and makes sure nobody forgets us, and then we put our names on our pews and we put our things there so everybody knows who we were? Or will we use every bit of influence that we have to point towards God? Who will you affirm? Who will you charge? Can I pray for you today? Let's stand for prayer. Father God, we come before you today, and Lord, I just pray, God, thank you so much for the life of Moses and that you were willing to share him warts and all. Lord, we thank you for that. We thank you that you shared the good times in his life and the hard times in his life. They speak to us, and you shared it so that we can learn. Not to put down Moses, not to say, oh, look at him, but so that we can actually learn from him. So God, I pray for that for us today. We got one final thought, Lord, and that's what kind of legacy will we leave? But we got to get this right, Lord, that it's not about just us. We got to get this right as a church. And I believe, Lord, there's somebody here that the reason why they'll never leave a great legacy is because it's all about them. And they're so insecure. And what will alleviate their insecurity is when they receive you. Because I believe this, God, they can't truly understand you and be insecure. When they see the vision for your future. You see, Moses, I believe he wasn't insecure, Lord, because he had his hope in you and he was going on to greater things and he knew that you would be there with them. I pray that over somebody today. Lord, there's somebody here today. They got the weight of the world on their shoulders. And I pray you take it off, Lord. When we said they're just not that important, we didn't mean it as an insult. We meant it's as a relief. There's a God and they're not him. It's okay. They can lay down the burden. They worry for their children. I get it. I do too. I worry for the world we're leaving our children. But then I know, God, you'll be there. You're the same God yesterday, today, and forever. And when we're gone, you'll still be here. So let us invest in what really matters. Let us affirm them in you. Let us point towards you. Let us use all of our influence not to hashtag ourselves, but God to help propel them forward so they can know you in this life and in the one to come. Lord, it's not too early. It's not too early to start, and it's never too late. I pray that somebody hears that today. Lord, for the one that needs you, I pray you come for them today. Let them know that you love them right where they are. And that if they would only open their life to you, that you sent your one and only son to die for them and rise from the dead and offering them resurrection power for whatever they're going through right now. Because the way I said it, it might have sounded really easy. This is not easy. But this is important, Lord. And if we get this right, it will change everything. God, help us to be a church that affirms. Help us be a church that charges to remember you. Lord, if we can do that, that would be an amazing thing. We'll give you all the honor and glory and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Guys, if you need prayer, we'll be here after the service. For everybody else, God bless you. Have a great week.